African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It's Thursday, the 2nd of October 2025, and of course the time is exactly 21:01 Central African Time. Good evening and welcome to Africa World Hour. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective. We're of course coming to you live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. Catch us live on SABC Plus app, on DSTV's audio bouquet, channel 802. And Open View, channel 628. I'm of course in for Tsepiso Makwetla.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
All right, let's look at Africa World Hour top stories today. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has issued a call for the immediate release of South African nationals detained by Israeli forces. The group is part of the global Samud flotilla, a 44-ship humanitarian convoy en route to Gaza. The flotilla was intercepted as it attempted to deliver aid to the Besinget region. In a social media post, the Israeli foreign minister announced that the detained crew members would be deported to a European country, though the destination has not yet been disclosed. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says South Africa remains committed to international solidarity. And Malawi's President-elect Peter Mutharika is set to take oath of office on Saturday, alongside Vice President-elect Jane Ansah. The former head of state staged a strong comeback in last month's election, securing 56.8% of the vote against incumbent President Lazarus Chakura's 33%. The government says several African leaders are expected to attend the inauguration ceremony. The Malawi's president-elect also outlined the task ahead.
The challenges before us are real. Our economy must recover. Food must be available for everyone. Jobs must be created. Our healthcare and education systems must be strengthened. Infrastructure must be improved. And above all, we must rebuild trust in the public institutions.
And now Zambia's High Commissioner designated to South Africa, Grace Mutembu, has reaffirmed Zambia's commitment to supporting international peace and security. Speaking in Pretoria, Mutembu praised South Africa's leadership on matters of continental and global security. She also congratulated South Africa on assuming the presidency of the G20 from December 2024 to November 2025, a milestone she described as a source of pride not only for South Africa but for the entire African continent.
Your Excellency, Zambia recognizes South Africa's key role on matters affecting continental and international security. I therefore reaffirm Zambia's unwavering commitment to supporting global efforts aimed at achieving international security and sustained peace. I further wish to extend our warmest congratulations to the Republic of South Africa for assuming the presidency of the G20 for the period beginning December 2024 to November 2025.
All right, and the South African government says the family of the country's ambassador to France, Nathi Mthethwa, has been in close contact with the French authorities regarding investigations into the death of their loved ones. Mthembu died after reportedly falling from the 22nd floor of a Paris hotel earlier this week. The family said they were also working closely with the Department of International Relations to bring Mthethwa home for a memorial and funeral service. DECO spokesperson Kristen Peary has more.
As of yesterday, the family of former Ambassador Mthethwa had released a statement to say that they initially have received a briefing from the French authorities and they understand that they would be receiving further information. So at some point we will be able to defer to the family to continue updating the public specifically on what the French authorities have informed them. I think because of the matter's sensitivity, it would be best also for the family to speak for themselves. But as we understand it, the matter is still under investigation by the French authorities.
And our rescue teams in Indonesia have said there are no more signs of life under the rubble of the school which collapsed in Eastern Java on Monday. The unstable nature of the rubble has also hampered the search. The BBC's Jonathan Head report.
For 3 days, rescuers at the school have been slowly crawling their way forward through the rubble. On Wednesday, they did manage to bring out 5 boys alive, as well as 2 who had died. But they'd been communicating with them and passing them food and water for many hours. With no more signs of life detected today, they say they will now bring in cranes to lift the fallen floors of the school building. The Indonesian authorities believe there are nearly 60 boys still under the rubble, but that there is now little chance of getting any of them out alive.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa. Channel Africa. Where every moment is an African celebration. Feel the energy. Feel the connection. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And now the South African Spaza Shop Association Young Traders has expressed that it is deeply concerned about the ongoing marginalization of young entrepreneurs within townships and informal business sectors. The association is calling on the South African government to open up buildings owned by the state for leasing to young traders as a means to foster economic empowerment and inclusive growth. Sisi Sikhalo has more on the story.
Right now I'm sick, very sick, man.
And I suppose you are depressed. You're thinking about your children as well.
Yes, ma'am, yes. I'm depressed now. This government, they face us, ma'am.
Simakale Monama, a mother of 5 from Winterfell Township, located in the Gauteng province of South Africa, was emotional when talking about her recent encounter with the local municipality. She has been running a tuck shop for 32 years, and recently the local municipality demolished that tuck shop, which was located outside a popular shopping complex in the area. She says she does not know how she's going to support her 11 family members. It is people like Munama that the South African Spaza Shops Association Young Traders say government is failing them. It says these actions of government are often driven by rezoning efforts that lack transparency and proper consultation. They also mentioned that young business owners are frequently excluded from the application and rezoning processes, leaving them vulnerable to eviction and economic disempowerment. The president of the association, Kotato Ramautswa, says they have not been given clear instructions on what to do. He says what is happening in Tshwane and Johannesburg is depressing for many.
They come, they tell us that is the municipal land, we can't work on it because of where our yard ends, that's our land. And they're not giving any option for us to work around. So we do not understand, is it adolescent of new mayors? Because of those stalls, we're speaking about stalls that have been there for 20 years from now. Maybe we think it's an adolescent of the new system that has taken over government in certain municipalities, because of what's seeing it happening in Tshwane and in Johannesburg. What is hurting much is that in Tshwane they even demolished stars that we know took many to university. So they've killed the income of many breadwinners.
Another hiccup that the association explained that it is facing is access to business premises. They say it is disheartening to witness how access to business premises, especially in strategic areas, remains reserved for those who can afford exorbitant costs, leaving young entrepreneurs and emerging Black-owned businesses at a disadvantage. Ramautswa says this barrier hampers the growth of small businesses.
You have industrial hubs, you have Rankua industrial hub, you have Babele industrial hub, you have houses within the CBD that are owned by the municipality, which are left there abandoned. We're trying to leave them out to say we want to do our business there. We want to come with programs that will teach our young people skills. But the municipality is failing to give them to us. We go through the process only to find out that there's one Indian man who's getting those leases alone. He owns 50 houses alone in the city that are owned by the state.
Meanwhile, the association has also alleged corruption from municipal officials to favor those who can pay bribery. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Segalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right, let's look at this story now. Moroccan Prime Minister Aziz Akhannouch says that he was open to dialogue to end youth protest as security forces prepared for a sixth night of demonstration which have escalated into riots across the country. Now, hundreds of people have been arrested and injured with buildings ransacked and cars torched since the protest began on Saturday. Though crowds have not been huge in numbers, the increasingly violent protest have brought the West Streets unrest in Morocco since mass demonstrations in the Rif region in 2016 and 2017. To discuss these developments, we're now joined on the line by political economist Professor Patrick Bond. Professor Bond, thank you so very much for making the time and welcome to Channel Africa.
Oh, thanks, Edison. Great to be with you and your viewers.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's a general narrative out there that the protests in Morocco are being driven by anger over corruption, inequality, and public spending priorities. Now, from a political, economy perspective, what structural issues, Professor, make these grievances so persistent in Morocco?
Oh, well, it's such an interesting mix because we're seeing these same phenomena cause uprisings everywhere at a repeated rate now. And the Moroccan regime, the king and his civil service put down the protests and made some concessions. If you recall, in 2011, the first big wave of protests in North Africa and the Middle East. Now, what has apparently set it off is a series of, let's say, decisions by a corrupt government. And these, it's no surprise to me that some of these include the Abraham Accords, which are the deals that the Moroccans did in the first Trump government with Israel. And now that Israel is on everyone's mind as a genocidal state, it's no surprise to see the kafia, the Palestinian solidarity symbol, the scarf, on many of the demonstrators' necks. But also the excessive spending on the World Cup. This is the biggest stadium for the 2030 World Cup that's going to be shared by Portugal, Spain, and Morocco. It's the Hassan II Stadium, 115,000 seats, not too far from Casablanca. And then on top of that, just a general decline in services, one that we're seeing across Africa as the debt crisis hits and as USAID dramatic cuts in foreign exchange support to some of the African states has now ended. And with the decline in trade that goes to the U.S. because the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act has now been cut, meaning, again, a shortage of forex required to pay high foreign debts. And so across Africa, I would call this, in a sense, the IMF riot that we had seen first in the 1980s and then in the 2000s. And in each case, the mix of repression, which then causes more protests, more riots, more angry citizenries, plus, to some extent, we're hoping for debt relief. Trevor Manuel in charge of that at G20 just still hasn't been enough to stave off the anger from below. And it's not only, of course, Morocco, but several other states in Africa are boiling with anger.
Yeah, and Professor, I wonder where the money comes from to build that stadium, if whether or not it's from FIFA or the government, because there's a need for clarity there, and there's a need for balancing act. We need beautiful stadium, but at the same time, people need to get basic services on the ground. But the question then is, to what extent are the protests a symbol of a wider generation crisis where digitally connected youth feel excluded from political and economic life?
Yes, that's right. But let's just quickly ask that question about, is the World Cup a good investment, sort of bread and circuses distraction from the problems? We had in 2010, hosting the World Cup, first of all, a bribe by FIFA, the local organizing committee, led by Danny Jordan, and it was apparently authorized for $10 million to bring in the CAFCA, that is the Caribbean network with the U.S., and that was a $10 million bribe that was prosecuted, but South Africa sort of got off the hook on it, and Jordan never had to answer that. But it was admitted that we had to outbribe Morocco, which had bribed the other African countries. And then, who builds these stadiums? Well, taxpayers do. They have to pay it off over time. And what we're left with in South Africa is a good example. Lots of empty stadiums that couldn't pay for themselves, all the promises, all the hype. And then FIFA took, in our case, about $3.2 billion worth of profits back to Zurich in Switzerland. Now, those are the sorts of conditions that I see all across the continent, where multinational corporates especially are taking advantage of the minerals. And now gold is the most important here in South Africa. We've got a huge gold stock still, even though we've, underneath here in Johannesburg, we lost about half the world's historic gold over about a century and a quarter. But the fact that we're still seeing governments, let's say, put more emphasis on foreign direct investment than on servicing people. And that's why, for example, in Kenya, when they put the taxes up in 2024, and that wasn't resolved, we had in June, July this year, major protests. We had them in Madagascar. We had them in Tunisia, especially led by workers. And then we can look at the rest of the world and find places like Nepal, the Indonesia, Pakistan up in flames. We've seen solidarity protests with Palestine the last few hours, the last few days across southern Europe, even in places where it's very difficult to protest. The right to protest has been taken away for Palestine in places like Germany and England and the United States. And yet the surge of solidarity protests is there. People sympathize with Palestinians against the Israelis. Now, all of this put together, and I would add to that climate, Greta Thunberg, the courageous young Swedish woman who represents, in a sense, the climate movement coming together with the Palestine solidarity movement. It's a variety of things, and yes, you're right that the social media phenomena has that's allowed people to connect in ways they didn't before. In 2011, we saw Tahrir Square in Egypt. We saw the Tunisians uprising in early 2011. Those are the sorts of things that are facilitated by Twitter and now X and Blue Sky and, of course, TikTok and Instagram. But they're there because of some very material reasons. And I think it's always good if you're looking at a country innocent, you should go to the IMF website. I just looked at the IMF website from Morocco, and they're absolutely full of praise about the 3.9% growth of the Moroccan government. This is in the last report that was issued in February this year. They didn't have a clue that this kind of anger bubbling around about the fiscal cuts, about the pressures associated with the lack of democratic expressions that the society is feeling, that it could go the way it is. I think it's, again, IMF riot 2.0 that we'd seen in prior eras, and I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah, indeed, Prof. I can imagine that, World Cup is a good investment when it's done right to the economy, as you gave the example with South Africa's 2010. But the fact that taxpayers will have to pay for this building project, I just can't wrap myself around that. But Prof, do you think Morocco's political economy still relies on authoritarianism, stability, where economic stability is, pursued without meaningful democratization?
Yes, they totally resist that democratization. In 2011, the king did make some minor concessions, but basically we're looking at only one of two full-fledged monarchies, the other being Eswatini, and the fact that also Morocco is a colonial power. It's taken over the Western Sahara next to it, and there's a lot of grievances about that, and the sense that Morocco really has got an ethical problem, and you see that with the way that the Abraham Accords were agreed to, thanks to Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, who went around, I think it was in 2020, to do those deals. And yeah, people are very, very angry. You can just see that sense that the regime, the king, is much more connected to Washington and to Tel Aviv than to the masses in the slums of Rabat and Casablanca and the other cities. It's really a national movement of people, and for, in a sense, a symbol of North African revival of that democratic spirit after it was kind of crushed, especially in Egypt, in Libya, in Tunisia. I think this will be seen as well. I think this could spur other activists, just the way the Kenyan Gen Z did, the way in Nepal and Indonesia, the Asians are rising. And I think around the world, the sense that the oligarchs are out of control, and here in Johannesburg in the G20, where we should be fixing problems like the climate crisis, public health, inequality, the need for coherent economics, coherent trade. We're failing to do so in this G20. I mean, we blame that, of course, on Donald Trump most of all, who comes to sabotage, or he's not even going to come. But he inherits it next year, and it just goes to show that our global leaders and national leaders are not up to the job of keeping our societies at least happy enough, and they are at a very rapid rate revolting.
Yeah. Prof, quickly, just before I let you go, as a parting shot, if we zoom out, Morocco is not alone. Tunisia, Algeria, and Egypt have also witnessed youth-led unrest in the last decade. What common economic patterns are driving, disconnect across North Africa?
I think it's neoliberalism. That's the philosophy of the World Bank, the IMF, the big corporates, the United States government, and our government as well, which means that the essence of policy objectives would be to attract more foreign direct investment, to privatize state services, to have a high interest rate to attract hot money to liberalize trade and to deregulate and to really cut away at the fat of the state. And that often cuts right into the bone and deep into the marrow, as we were seeing. I mean, South Africa isn't really an exception because we have, in addition to the countries you've mentioned, we have the record rate of social protests, we have service delivery catastrophes, we have middle-class people, working-class people, poor people, all now coming out to the streets. And if you're managing the G20 here in Johannesburg and you see that you're not delivering the water, City Power is disconnecting people through load reduction along with Eskom. These are the sorts of things that make people very angry, isn't it? And so I think until we get a different philosophy, one that's based more on the social democratic instincts and the redistributive potential of relatively wealthy countries like South Africa, which has the worst inequality in the world, this city, Johannesburg, the worst inequality of any city, and the worst corporate corruption of any city, according to PwC. Until we can address, misbehavior by our elites and these injustices, well, we're going to get more and more protests.
Yeah, Professor Bond, thank you so very much for making the time. It's always good to listen to your insights.
Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Political economist Professor Patrick Bond. That conversation brings us to exactly 21:25 Central African Time.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimakazo Pasha. How to remain consistent with Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could run from and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Channel Africa, where every moment is an African celebration. Feel the energy, feel the connection. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Now, at the 8th session of the Specialized Technical Committee on Finance, Monetary Affairs, Economic Planning and Integration taking place in Johannesburg, African leaders are confronted with a stark reality under the theme Bridging Africa's Health Financing Gap in a Challenging Geo-Economic Context. The message was clear. Unless Africa closes its health financing gap, development will stall. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana set the tone, calling for faster global, or should I say fairer global systems and stronger domestic commitments. Dimakazo Leshuru has the details.
Another session where African leaders talked about improving funding for their health budgets. 24 years since they talked and agreed in Abuja, Nigeria, to allocate 15% of their budgets on health. For most of those gathered here, this remains unattainable. They only spend 7.2% on average. Donations continue to be the strategy for funding public health, while only 35% of households can afford private health care. The rest are exposed to health systems that the leaders themselves don't want to use. The 8th African Union Specialized Technical Committee is a body of ministers and senior policymakers from AU member states. It provides expertise, policy guidance and recommendations on key areas like finance, health, justice to ensure AU policies are technically sound and evidence-based. The STC heard of concerns about the risks facing Africa, its stability, productivity and prosperity if it continues to rely on donor funding. This is because donor aid has collapsed. Funding cuts, particularly by US aid programs like PEPFAR, have put millions of people at risk and affected hundreds of livelihoods. The African Union Development Agency's NADO's Bekele Thomas.
Since our last gathering, the ground has shifted beneath us. Health aid to Africa has fallen by almost 70%, just as debt service threatened to consume a third of our revenues. Trade disruptions and rising tariffs have narrowed the space for growth, and the spirit of multilateralism and cooperation on which our progress depends has been retreating, replaced by fragmentation and insecurity.
She called for Africa to build health sovereignty by ending illicit financial flows and reducing 99% dependence on imported vaccines. Chief Executive at the African Trade and Investment Development Insurance, ATIDI, Manuel Moses, has called for local solutions to be found.
We need to step up as Africans to figure out how to support our health initiatives on our own, given that the health budgets have disappeared or have been taken away. So we need to respond, creating innovative solutions around this.
Bekele Thomas went further, saying Africa must shed dependency once and for all.
Africa is not passive. We are not here for bailouts or sympathy. We are here to lead, to design, and to deliver. The hospitals we finance, the corridors we build, the industries we scale, the energy we generate, and the food we produce will determine whether Agenda 2063 becomes a reality or remains just a slogan. The choice is ours. Let us be bold, let us be disciplined, and let us deliver.
South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana told the gathering that unsustainable debt and global inequalities are draining Africa's resources and stalling progress.
We must ensure that health financing is sustainable, not just for a single financial year, but for generations to come. This means strengthening our domestic resource mobilization and finding innovative ways of financing our health sector. We need to explore a range of solutions, including increasing our budgetary allocations and commit to increasing the share of our national budget dedicated to health in line with the Abuja Declaration.
Eswatini's Finance Minister Neil Richkenberg highlighted the broader financing gap over $200 billion a year and reiterated the call for Africa to take control of its own destiny.
Solutions lie within our collective agency. These include enhanced governance and accountability, closing the infrastructure gap by leveraging public-private partnerships, fostering more AFCFTA-led regional projects, and lowering the cost of capital by reforming perceptions through our own credit rating mechanisms and credible fiscal frameworks.
Meanwhile, the CEO of the African Peer Review Mechanism, Ambassador Marie-Antoinette Rose-Quatre, announced progress on Africa's own credit rating agency, AFCRA, designed to ensure fairer access to finance. It's been decided the agency will be based in Mauritius.
By the end of this year, AFCRA will have an established office, a robust shareholding base, and a strong management structure, with preparations on the way to issue its first ratings in 2026. And finally, I'm delighted to inform you that AFCRA will be fully operational by the second quarter of 2026, when its first ratings are expected to be issued.
From health financing to trade reform, leaders have spoken with one voice. Investing in health is not charity. It is Africa's sovereign path to prosperity. But whether all this translates to action remains to be seen. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro in Johannesburg.
In Washington, the government shutdown continues to deepen. The President, Donald Trump, now signaling mass layoff of federal workers if Democrats refuse to back his budget demands. The Republican president doubled down on threats to shrink parts of the federal bureaucracy. The comments mark a sharp escalation in Trump's standoff with congressional Democrats who remain locked in negotiations over funding priorities. To talk to us about this further, we're joined on the line by U.S. politician and expert, Professor Douglas Yates. Professor, thank you so much for making the time and welcome to Channel Africa.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, Prof, what does President Trump's threat lay off federal workers tell us about his broader negotiating strategy during this shutdown?
He believes that threatening the Democrats will lead them to submit to his will. And if they don't, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the consequences to the federal workforce, nor to ordinary Americans who rely on federal services, because he lives, well, in his golden palace in Florida, untouched and without any need himself personally, nor his rich donors. So, from his point of view, the Democrats must simply submit. Having said that, if this goes on for a long time, then there'll be a political cost to be paid. But in the short run, for a week, for 2 weeks, maybe even for 3 weeks, I think he's going to play hardball. And that's because he himself, his business, and the interests of his donors are not affected. If you look at the stock market, the American stock markets are at record highs. And this has been fed by artificial intelligence. And as long as the stock market's booming, he and his kind are satisfied. But the Democrats are planning on using this, their perhaps only weapon, against the Republican agenda.
Yeah, as you indicated that this does not affect him at all. And in your view, do you see this as a tactical bluff, for a lack of a better term, to pressure Democrats, or a genuine attempt to basically shrink the federal government?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that. If you were to look at Donald Trump's priorities, it is to bury the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, in which there are documents implicating him in organized crime, pedophilia, prostitution, and that's been the real threat to him. So absolutely anything, a nuclear war, a stock market crash, a government shutdown, anything that draws American attention away from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal serves his interests. The collateral damage he's perfectly indifferent to, and he has no economic program whatsoever vis-a-vis the debt. He had said he wanted to cut the debt, but in the end, like the Democrats, he simply increases it. It's just a question of who benefits from the debt. But no, he has no interest in reducing expenditure. However, he has indicated that he will fire federal workers. Normally, you'll hear the word furlough. What that means is you're temporarily kept at home, and when the event is over, you receive your back pay, your salary. Instead of furloughing federal workers, he's threatening to cut federal workers. But this doesn't have to do with the expenses. The reason he's threatening to cut federal workers is part of his agenda, the MAGA agenda, is to fire people of color. And fire people who have different sexual proclivities, fire people who will stand up to him, like the people who report on the jobs statistics.
Yeah, and talking about firing people who stand up against him, I'm keen to hear your view. By forming federal agencies, for an example, as he calls it, quote unquote, Democrats' agencies and a political scam, what kind of narrative, in your view, is Trump trying to build here about the state and bureaucracy?
So, as a populist, he hasn't even really, I think, fully understood that he is now a dictator. But as a populist politician, the position is normally that the government is full of cabals of elites who are stealing, are corrupt, and have plans to destroy the American way of life. And so the image he's always pandered of the United States government is that it's a terrible thing. And so of course that's not what the Republicans or Congress think. For them, it's a multi-trillion-dollar cash cow, and they're perfectly happy having large government spending. But he's not really like Ronald Reagan. He's not an ideologue who has a coherent policy plan. So this is a rhetorical flourish. When he wants to call the army into U.S., he doesn't think it's unimportant. So he's really incoherent, and to understand his opinions about big government or weight, it's a rhetorical flourish for a populist space. That is, he's speaking to the television programs on Fox News that he watches. That's his whole world.
Yeah, and Prof, I'm glad that you're putting this to say that leadership is different. He's not like the previous presidents that we've witnessed in America. But in your view, as a parting shot, what would be the immediate and long-term consequences of mass layoff of federal employees for U.S. governance when they talk about issues around service delivery?
Yeah, so the big financial institutions have provided some simple numbers. One is that it's about 0.1 or 0.2% of GDP per week. So the last 10 weeks, it'll knock the percentage point off U.S. growth. Another effect of those layoffs is that many of these targeted groups are individuals who are reporting statistics that contradict his electoral claims. What Trump wants to do is come into the next year's elections claiming the economy is doing great, there's never been more jobs, the government is fine, and so firing people who work in the government selectively will allow him to eliminate his enemies. The most stunning thing we watched was when hundreds of generals and admirals were pulled to Virginia to be slapped and spit upon by the administration. And those generals were brought in for private meetings. So as far as cutting down staff, there's nothing objective about it. This is a political purge where the only criteria is loyalty. And that, of course, is the authoritarian agenda.
Yeah. And do you see this escalation weakening investor business confidence in the United States, given the unpredictability and the challenges of governance in the country? Do you see this affecting investor confidence?
So there's going to be winners and losers, and that's the best way to understand this. So yeah, if you're running a small business, you don't know what to do. You've got these tariffs that are making it difficult to calculate how to get your supply chain going. You have consumer confidence problems, so you don't know who's going to buy. But if you're one of the big tech businesses in America, that is, if you're one of the American giants in energy, in artificial intelligence, in weapons, these are going to be the best of times. And you can see that by the stock.
All right, Professor Douglas Yates, thank you so very much for coming on to the show, and have a great evening ahead.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Bye. There you have it, U.S. political expert, Professor Douglas Yates, talking to us there about the U.S. shutdown in America.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos Lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And now tensions in the Middle East have deepened once again after Israeli forces intercepted the global Samud flotilla, a convoy of ships attempting to break the blockade of Gaza and deliver humanitarian aid. Reports confirm that at least 39 vessels were stopped and dozens of crew members detained. Human rights groups are calling for the interception unlawful, saying it reflects Israel's determination to enforce what they describe as a policy of deliberately starving Palestinians in Gaza. We're now joined on the line by Amnesty International South Africa's Executive Director, Shanila Mohammed. Shanila, a very good evening to you and welcome to Channel Africa.
Evening, Innocent, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Yeah, indeed. Amnesty has described Israel's blockade of Gaza as unlawful. What does the interception of the global Samud flotilla tell us about Israel's determination to really enforce that blockade?
Well, Innocent, as you know, that this blockade has been going on for almost 2 decades. And, now with the genocide that Israel is carrying out against the Palestinians, it's worsened considerably to the extent where any humanitarian organization that was in the past operating within Gaza or the occupied territories is no longer there because Israel has been killing, bombing. I mean, even humanitarian workers have not been safe from the brutal attacks by Israel. So this flotilla and the mere fact that these flotillas continue to try to bring about, to go on these peaceful humanitarian missions to bring food, water, all the basic human rights necessities that the people need, is an indication of just how dire the situation is in Gaza. And I think that, Israel's forceful interception of the flotilla, and this is not the first time that they've done this, really is a brazen assault on the solidarity activists who are all they're trying to do is carry out a peaceful humanitarian mission and try to bring an end to the crimes against humanity of using starvation and famine as a way to destroy the people of Palestine.
Yeah, and Shanila, critics argue that the flotilla was delivering humanitarian aid, yet Israel treated it as a threat. In your view, from a human rights perspective, what obligations does Israel have under the international law in such situations?
Well, first of all, Vincent, Israel, since the flotillas, since the boats in this flotilla started off, Israel has been continuously threatening and inciting, violence. We have seen drones over the boats. So they have continued to threaten the people on these flotillas. And remember that these boats are in international waters. So already Israel was in violation of the maritime international law, where they cannot prevent, these boats from being in international waters because they have no rights over those waters. And then secondly, I think that, by continuing to actively block this vital aid to a population against whom they themselves are committing genocide and inflicting famine, they are once again demonstrating that they have absolutely no respect and that they're totally in contempt of any legally binding orders of the International Court of Justice. You will remember, Innocent, that just a few months ago, the International Court of Justice actually instructed Israel to lift the blockade and allow humanitarian assistance in. So they are in violation of the International Court of Justice, and actually they are in violation of international law, because as an occupying power under international law, it is their responsibility to ensure that Palestinians in Gaza have access to sufficient food and life-saving humanitarian assistance. So every possible humanitarian and international law that is out there, Israel is violating.
Yeah, and can you comfortably say that this interception is an act of collective punishment against Palestinians? Is that where you're coming from?
Well, for a while now, Israel has been using famine and starvation against the Palestinians, in addition to bombing them, in addition to sniper bullets, in addition to all the other brutalities that fall under the crime of genocide. So yes, I mean, obviously Israel is determined to annihilate the Palestinian people. So, whether it's through starvation, whether it is through genocide, whether it's through, just blocking any form of medical or humanitarian assistance. I mean, Israel has bombed every hospital in Gaza, and yet they are continuing to kill and to maim people. There are no doctors. There is nothing available to the people of Gaza. So yes, I mean, you can call it a punishment, or you can actually call it genocide and crimes against humanity. I mean, they are basically intend to punish the people of Gaza, and they intend to wipe out the people of Gaza, and this is exactly what they are doing.
Yeah, and I know that South Africa took Israel to the ICJ, but in your view, Shanila, what mechanisms exist to hold Israel accountable for what Amnesty calls, what you are calling unlawful actions? And why have they largely failed up to now? I mean, it does seem as though it's really difficult to win against them.
It's Innocent. I think the worst thing ever that we have seen in our lifetime is is this global, so we have to remember that this is 2 years in the making, and prior to that as well, we have seen massive rights violations against Palestinians. But I mean, this intensity against the Palestinians started 2 years ago after October the 7th. And I think that, the mere fact that it's taken the global leaders or the world 2 years to even acknowledge that a genocide is taking place is really an indictment on the horrific leadership that we have in the world today. And I think that, when you ask why have we failed, well, Israel has been propped up by some of the most powerful countries in the world. We've seen many countries in the European Union. We have seen the United Kingdom. We have seen, Donald Trump, and prior to him, the United States. It's not just about Donald Trump. America has always been sort of supporting and propping up Israel. So the failure, it's a huge failure on the part of global leaders. And I think South Africa taking the case to the court actually shows South Africa's leadership, but it's a long process, Innocent. And I think what's happening is that many organizations like ours have been on the ground, have been gathering this evidence, and this evidence will eventually come before the International Criminal Court. But unfortunately, and by the time that happens, we will see more and more suffering, more and more murders, more and more killings, starvation, famine. Already over 65,000 Palestinians have died. And, we are not going to see justice anytime soon, but it's all we have, Innocent. It's all we have. We have to keep on pushing until justice is served. And we're seeing momentum globally. Even now as I speak, because of the flotilla, all over the world, there are people out in the streets. So, the people of the world have got to really hold their leaders to account. And I see that happening more and more and more. Unfortunately, it's coming at the cost of massive lives lost in the occupied territories in Gaza.
And I would imagine that, as allies, as friends, we need to call each other out. It does seem as though America and Israel, they're failing to do that in terms of peer review mechanism of some sort, to say that, but what you're doing is not in line with human rights. But then my next question, Shanila, is how important is international solidarity, like the flotilla movement, in really challenging the blockade when governments themselves appear unwilling to basically act, for a want of a better term?
Well, I think, initiatives like the flotilla are extremely important in that, there are initiatives that have attempted to break Israel's unlawful blockade. They have emerged as powerful symbols of solidarity with the besieged, starved and suffering Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And, imagine yourself there in Gaza. I mean, the saddest thing I saw recently was, children who are waiting there in Gaza for the flotillas. It gives those people a little flicker of hope that there are people out there who actually care. There are people out there who are still fighting for them. And I think in that sense it really is very, very important. But I also think it's a very important message to send to the world leaders that are complicit in this genocide, that are either sitting on the fence, that are not taking positions. And again, it's not just about innocent peer review or calling each other out. We are talking here about countries that are arming Israel. We are talking about countries that are giving Israel all the firepower, the resources, the money they need to carry out a genocide and crimes against humanity. So this is not just about, calling it out. I mean, this is about giving them the resources they need. And so therefore, countries like the United States, countries like the United Kingdom, Germany, all the other countries that have been providing Israel with these arms and with the resources, they are complicit in a genocide. And I think that it's gone way beyond just a peer review. Now, those that are complicit have also got to be dragged before the International Criminal Court, and we need to see that justice. And the power lies in the hands of the people. More and more people need to take to the streets. More and more people need to come out and say to their leaders, we will not sit back and be part of a genocide. We will not allow you to do this in our name.
Shanila Mohammed, thank you so much for making the time, and your work is really commendable, and continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you, Innocent.
All right, there you have it. That was South Africa's Executive Director of Amnesty International, Shanila Mohammed, really talking to us about the flotilla that is captured in that part of the world. All right, it's that time of the night where I have to welcome Shayla into the studio to tell us about what's coming up on African Diaries between now and midnight. Shayla, good evening to you, and what have you in store for us and our listeners?
Allow me to pry into your life. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
It's almost Friday.
Yeah, I don't know if I can celebrate with you, Innocent. I don't, because Monday and Sunday and Wednesday are all the same day to me.
Why is that?
Because we're always welcome to it. So if you welcome people 7 days a week, there's nothing to get excited about when it comes to the weekend. What I am excited to find out, though, is do you have children, sir?
Yeah, I do. 2
you
daughters.
Do. Yeah. And what is your parenting style?
It's soft because they're girls.
Okay.
If I had a boy, I was gonna be hard on him. But it's nature, because I'm more leaning to my mom. Also, I'm not a mama's boy, but I'm like, I've been raised that way to take care of women. I feel bad when I shout at them, but yeah.
So how do you discipline them?
Well, there's a naughty corner, but it looks like it's not working these days. They enjoy that naughty corner. They'll be singing.
Oh, no. And the reason I ask you this is because we have an opportunity to look at parenting styles. Now, there's a school of thought that says, be soft, be gentle, speak. Children can listen. There's another school of thought that says, you spare the rod, you completely ruin the child.
Yeah.
And so you have to apply. It doesn't, boy, girl, they identify as a flower. It doesn't matter what they identify as. You cannot spare the rod, because then that comes at the cost of this child's life at a later stage.
But what area of life are you not are you not, comfortable in giving advices?
Wait, let me understand the context.
The area of life,
yes,
where you're not qualified to give, counsel for people. Maybe it's dating, or challenges in the marriage, or anything. What is that thing? That
for me?
Yeah, for you.
Personally?
Yeah.
I can talk about anything. I can talk about everything. And the reason I can is because I like reading. And I love studying people. I love psychology. So when it comes to the human mind, engaging the human mind, I think I've done a good job at listening. And so I just regurgitate what I've been taught. Yeah, so we have a lot of professionals that come on the show and they'll tell us things like, oh, Shayla, listen, I don't think that teaching your child how to drive at 15 is safe, given the fact that there are a lot of accidents that children have been involved in because they had access to the keys, because you conscientize them that way. Whereas another parent will say, if you teach them how to own things, then they have a respect for it. So for me, it's an exciting conversation, and I hope you get to listen in and maybe check out whether the balancing or whether there is a need for balancing in the way you raise your daughters.
What are you currently reading at the moment?
At the moment, what am I reading? There's this book on music that is trapping me. Oh, I don't even know the author. That's how bad it was. I was reading The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And that was such a beautiful book because it spoke about how this fast-paced age is the reason why people are stagnant and failing and missing out on the experience of life, right? And I think that was pretty cool. This music, I'm trying. Yeah. I'm on page 16. And page 16 and I are looking at each other like this. What are you reading, sir?
I'm reading Time to Kill.
Oh, by?
At the moment. I want to understand a bit of law to really make sense of some of, South Africa has been inundated with a lot of laws and a lot of judicial challenges. So I need, as a journalist, I think it's important that I equip myself.
Oh, come on. And that is the voice of Innocent Semosa.
All right. There you have it. She's with you from now until midnight. Sheila, thank you so much and have a beautiful show ahead. That's a wrap up on tonight's installment of Africa World Hour. From myself, Innocent Samosa, producer Dumelo Zulu, technical producer Francis Masina, and the rest of the African World Hour team. Thank you for listening. For comments on the show, send us an email at info@channelafrica.org. From myself, Innocent Samosa, and the team, it's goodbye and God bless.
Channel Africa, where every moment is an African celebration. Feel the energy, feel the connection. Channel Africa, the African perspective.